Welcome to Biztech's Startup Show, where we feature startup companies across industries as they build and scale their businesses. Today, the featured company is Affinity. Affinity is founded by global investment company Temasek and headquarters in Singapore with a hub in Berlin. Now, Affinity uses decentralized technologies to develop self-sovereign identity solutions, empowering individuals and organizations with control over their data. Now, to tell us more about Affinity, we have Junius Ho, a founding team member of Affinity. Junius, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Ryan.
You know, Junius, Affinity is a very interesting type of company. Tell us more about it.
Yeah, so Affinity, as you talked about, we are a technology company that helps to create and share trusted portable digital identities and credentials. And what that really means is by helping to return control of our identities, of our data back to individuals and businesses, we can really start to create a lot more trust in the new digital world. One of the challenges for me personally has been when I've moved around, a lot of my information has sat in individual kind of platforms or in my home countries. I remember moving to the UK and not being able to get a bank account, not being able to get an apartment because they just didn't know who I was. And the information that I had in the US was not portable, was not translatable to the services there. So what Affinity does is we work to create these portable digital identities that can be used for multiple services across different countries and different platforms. We use this technology to solve real world problems. There's a few businesses that we currently are involved in. One of the major ones and one of the biggest topics right now is around opening up borders with safe travel across the world during this pandemic. And one of the challenges that we see is there are very different requirements and ever-changing requirements on vaccination records, test results, and there's a bunch of different standards of those pieces of information. And when you're traveling, having to sort through all that, travel is already stressful enough in these times. Having the right information, sharing that with the right person and the right authority is a massive challenge that we're undertaking currently.
Okay, and I'm going to come back to that in a short bit. But your background is very, very unusual. As you said earlier, you moved around a lot. Tell us about your career path so far after you finish your bachelor's and master's at MIT.
Sure. I have been as the son of immigrants, right? I have what I call kind of immigrant 2.0 mentality. And what that means specifically is I look at big opportunities, and particularly I'm interested in how technology is really going to impact and change the way that we live, we work, we play. For me, my first journey was when mobile technology seemed to be the big thing. And I moved from Boston out to Silicon Valley to chase this trend, right? To chase this big innovation wave, and had the great opportunity to work at larger companies like Oracle and Palm. I was at Palm when the first iPhone was released. So this was the beginning of what they call the smartphone wars. And now, 15 years later, we're still seeing the impact of that innovation. And I also then decided I wanted to try something smaller, to do startups. And I had a classmate that had a medical device startup in Minneapolis. And
in Minnesota.
Yes, Minnesota. For the viewers here may not be as familiar, but it's in the middle of the US, kind of in the northernmost part where it can get to -30 in the winter.
Very cold, and the home of Paisley Park if you're a Prince fan.
Yes, and we got the purple for Prince in the background right here.
What happened once you're in Minneapolis, you're in a medtech startup, right?
Yes, I was in a medtech startup, and then I sort of missed the digital aspect of it, and I saw this combination of my two worlds, right? The mobile piece of it, working on smartphones, and then the healthcare and this rise of mobile health. So having health in your pocket, whether it's health apps or just that connectivity. And ultimately, that led me back to California to work with BCG Digital Ventures. I had another classmate there that was doing product. And what fascinated me about that was really building new products and new companies, new businesses, innovative new businesses with the world's most influential corporates. And that, for me, was a tremendous opportunity. Marrying my two worlds took me to a number of places, including the UK, where I had the great opportunity to work with De Beers, the diamond company, building the world's kind of preeminent diamond traceability solution using blockchain. So these are the types of things that just being open to those opportunities and being mobile, right, in kind of a borderless world, in my mind, really led to the shaping of my career.
And then Affinity now, you're trying to solve problems around data.
Yes.
Tell us how your solutions work.
Yeah, so we really provide the building blocks to solve for identity issues, right? So the core creation, your identity consists of not just who you are, but everything about you. You think about some of the credentials that you have for, let's say, applying for a job, right? So you have your identity, you have your educational, your diploma, you could have some of the background information about you, such as your work history. Right now, all that sits in various different places. You may have a CV, you may have a LinkedIn profile, but to take that and to solve the key challenges around A, how do I trust that this information is real and authentic, right? Second, how do I make sure it's in a format that I can easily process and read? And third, how do I make sure that the information I share is just the information that's needed and not sharing too much information? We've seen currently out there in the world, there's massive data breaches, right? Where you have these huge pools of data or financial information and other really sensitive information, passwords are being exposed. And by giving that control, by giving all that information sort of back in the control of individuals and businesses, you start to be able to protect it. And using our technology, which at the heart of it is called a verifiable credential. So what is a verifiable credential, right? It is a standardized format of information, of data that is authenticated, right? It's trustable, as well as interoperable and portable, right? It can be read easily by the technology we provide, and it is privacy preserving, so you can selectively share the information that comes on it. One of the best ways to understand this is actually through one of the use cases that has really taken traction in this pandemic that I mentioned earlier on safe travel, right? Okay. So if you take a COVID test result, right? Okay. This is something that right now, if you go to any event or any airport, you have a mixture, right? Especially international travel, of paper certificates, all in different formats, all in different languages, right? Some may be issued by a country, some may be issued by a laboratory. Being able to read all that as a human, right, is very, very challenging. But to be able to process that, make sure that A, the information is accurate and trusted, but B, operationally being able to help travelers be able to get through borders safely, securely, and quickly. That's one of the biggest challenges that the world faces right now and that our technology can help solve. Okay, and so who are your target audience in terms of the paymasters? Is it governments? Is it corporations? And where is the role of the individual in this in terms of controlling their data? Yeah, so our customers are predominantly businesses and governments and public and private sector entities, right? We are ecosystem builders. The biggest thing that we look to, the problems that we're trying to solve around digital trust for the world are massive. It's not something that one player can solve. So we work together on these collaborations to solve the challenges. So one of the early partnerships that we had was here in Singapore, working with Accredify to be able to process some of these digital certificates with the border control here in Singapore, right? Being able to read those certificates, as well as for inbound travelers, being able to read both national standards, as well as some of the independent kind of certificates that were being issued for COVID test results.
Okay, and basically your execution model is also premised on you building all these partnerships, because essentially you can have the platform, but they have to be able to read and write on your technology, correct?
Yeah. Yes, and this is where one of the early decisions that we made was, how can we simply integrate this into the workflow, right? How does a customs agent integrate this technology during this time where we really can't wait 3 or 6 months to be able to solve the problem? So the first thing that we did with this universal verification solution is to make it available as a web app. So if you had any device, whether it was an iPad or even a phone, you could actually scan and log in as an agent, and then be able to read the different certificates through QR codes.
Could you share perhaps some of your corporate customer use cases? I think you did one with Etihad Airways, for example.
Yes, absolutely. So I think one of the biggest things for a passenger and for an airline is there are so many different rules and so many different certificates and standards and documents out there that when I leave the house to get on a flight right now, sometimes it could be uncertain whether or not I'm going to be able to get on the plane. And if that happens, everybody loses, right? The passenger now has to change their whole schedule. Right now, people aren't traveling as much for leisure, right? They're traveling because they have to. Maybe it's a family situation, maybe it's urgent work, right? And to get that certainty, working with the airlines, we're able to now make sure that when somebody shows up, they can trust that that COVID test result is not only authentic, but easily readable and can be processed against the destination country's entry requirements. Because those especially could be changing from a week-to-week, day-to-day basis.
Exactly, and that's a big challenge at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, Junius, one issue that often crops up when we talk about data is data privacy misuse standards. So all these little buzzwords come up. How do you take care of that across jurisdictions?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, right? The really important thing for Affinity is to make sure that we work closely with our customers, right? Whether they're private enterprises or public institutions to meet those requirements, right? And for us, privacy and the ability for an individual or a business to be able to have control over their data is paramount, right? And depending on the use case, we can always work with them to minimize the information that is shared.
Yeah, and I'm sure that, correct me if I'm wrong, essentially how you work is you're the platform provider, but from a compliance standpoint, you just comply with local laws.
Yes, that's correct, right? We don't set the rules, of course. We really provide the tools to make that possible to operationalize those.
Now, you're the Chief Product Officer with Affinity, and you're obviously then spearheading the product roadmap and strategy. Tell us about it and what's your vision for this?
Sure. As the Chief Product Officer, I think what I love about my job is that it is my job to deeply understand our customers and their challenges, right? One of the things when you ask about the vision, I start first with one of our design principles, right? And so often I get asked about our technology because it is something exciting and it is something new. But one of our key principles is that our products, our experiences, they should be like magic. Customers don't necessarily know how it works, but they can't stop using it, right? And in that, there's this beautiful piece of driving value, creating value, giving value to our customers, while still taking this amazing technology and applying to their lives. For us, on our vision, right, going back to my own personal journey, let's say in 10 years, I've been here in Singapore and my whole life has become very much just Singapore, and all the services that I use are here in Singapore. I would love, with the enablement of our technology, that when I'm flying back on Singapore Airlines, right, to the US, that on the plane, I'm able to see, okay, when I land, I have Grab, I have Food Panda, I have Chope, some of these services to take ride sharing, as well as to order food and to book tables, reservations at restaurants. When I land in LA, right, I want to be able to automatically take an Uber and pay for that. I want to be able to book a table through OpenTable or another service, but knowing all my preferences, having all of my information, and without having to actually pull all that and manually sort of manipulate it to get that service. So that's kind of the broad vision. But for us as a business in the next 1 to 2 years, it's really continuing to build these ecosystems and work with the partners, like on the travel side, working with Common Pass, Accreditify, as well as some of the airlines that you mentioned, Singapore Airlines, Scoot, Etihad, right? These are the key enablers, these relationships, and the products that we're building with them are going to help us reach the milestones that we're trying to achieve.
But where do you see the challenges with decentralized technology and self-sovereign identity in order for you to achieve your vision that you talked about?
I think there's two parts to this. One is that decentralized technologies, when we talk about it, folks have a really vested interest in just learning about something new. And sometimes it distracts from what's the real problem that we're trying to solve and the real value that it can bring. So that's one challenge that we face. I think the other is that we're really trying to solve massive problems on a global scale, right? And it's going to take some time. So how do we start to create that immediate value today, right? If you were to ask someone 2 years ago, right, to start to digitize all of their travel documents, right, it might be a nice to have. It might be something that was interesting, and for a high-powered business traveler, maybe that's very compelling. But now, post-pandemic, you start to see that really decentralized technology is one of the only ways that you can bring the world together to solve some of these challenges.
Now, Junius, final question. It's been a fascinating conversation. What would you like to leave us with as your final parting thoughts?
I think that my final parting thought would be that the move, I was fortunate to be working in the industries, moving from sort of what they call Web 1.0 to Web 2.0 and part of the mobile revolution. And while you look back and you say, hey, it took about anywhere from 5 to 10 years to have that shift, it's slow to get started, but when it comes quickly, right? And the more prepared you are for it, the more we educate ourselves about a better way to do things, the better and faster we'll achieve that sort of new result, that new world, right? I always joke with candidates, we're hiring a lot of folks here, say, when you understand what this technology can do, you can't help but see how many things are broken and how you want to fix it. So for us,
so your lenses are completely different then.
Yeah, exactly. One of the biggest challenges is where do we focus, right? Because there's so many different areas that are applicable. And I think so far, we've done a pretty good job of it.
Now, Junius, thank you very much for taking the time to be on the show.
Yes, thanks so much, Brian. It was terrific. Really appreciate the time.
I'm Brian Fernandez, and I've been speaking to Junius Ho, founding team member of Affinity, on Biztech Startup Show. This video will be on our Facebook and LinkedIn sites, as well as our website, www.biztech.asia. Please like and subscribe to our various platforms. Thanks again for tuning in.